Hello, hi, and welcome. I am Wildchevy. I am joined by Casey Roberts, also known as Rocketyeti, and today we're going to be talking about Fragged Empire with Wade. Hello, guys. How are you today?
I'm doing
Good.
great. How are you doing?
Doing good.
I'm good, mate. How are you?
It's a nice little day here today.
So, it's actually evening where we're at, but Wade, you're not local to us, are you?
No, no, so I'm Melbourne, Australia, so it's a bit after midday on Monday for me.
Okay. To be honest, I don't know a whole lot about Australia other than like what I've learned off the movies. So it's all like drop bears and you know killer kangaroos and that sort of thing. Dingoes eating babies, right?
Well, I think us locals, like, we forget how much more poisonous stuff and dangerous things we have here. We just kind of used to it. Like, I grew up with brown snakes and, like, blue-ringed octopus and redback spiders and stuff. Like, to me, they're just normal, but it's not that bad.
Yeah, I'm actually originally from another place called Arizona in the States, and it's about as inhospitable as you like. The joke is, if it's not trying to poison you, it's trying to lay its eggs in you. So, but Alan said you've got a Kickstarter going called Fragged
Yep.
Empire, right? Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, one of the taglines that stuck out to me was you reference Alien, Firefly, Farscape, Mass Effect, and a lot of other really known things. That's a lot of inspiration, a lot of really good inspiration. So maybe you could give us a little bit of introduction to the game.
Yeah, okay, so Fragged Empire is a tabletop role-playing game. Science fiction, of course, by all the inspiration stuff that I've sort of put there. So in this setting, it's post-apocalyptic. So it's not set right after the apocalyptic event. It's 100 years after that. And it's following four races as they're sort of just rediscovering space travel, just reconnecting with each other, and so there's a lot of exploration, but also there's also a lot of genetic engineering as a big theme in this. So I think the reason why I sort of put forward those sort of points of inspiration for me is to try and give people a bit of a snapshot of what I'm going for. Because this is a new setting, it takes a lot of work to try and show people what it is. So if I just base this off a movie or an existing book or something, then it would be a lot easier. But because it's a new thing, I'm like saying, okay, it's a little bit like this and a little bit from this and it's a little bit like this. So if you like kind of like these spacefaring sci-fi settings, you're gonna like this.
Okay.
Uh,
So you
as
said
the
there's.
creator, sorry,
Oh,
as the creator of Fragged Empire, where did you first get the idea, inclination to bring this into a game?
So this is a question I get asked a little bit actually. I grew up playing role-playing games all through my teen years, and I didn't realize it at the time, but it was a slightly unique role-playing culture because my friends and we were always homebrewing. We were always designing our own rules and tweaking systems, and we always homebrewed everything. And that sort of created a bit of a culture of game design, but we didn't realize it because we were all we knew. That's all we knew at the time. So I since grew up and I sort of moved away from there and I started designing a couple of my own games, a sci-fi one and a fantasy one. And I found the sci-fi one kind of really resonated with people, and pretty much I think I kind of got carried away. I don't think I really knew what I was doing when I started. It wasn't some big grand plan. I was just doing it because it's something I loved, and yeah.
so you said you've been doing a lot of home brewing and a lot of kind of game design on your own.
Yep.
How long have you been working on Fragged Empires for?
So I
Before it came to Kickstarter.
So I think Fragged Empire started out way back in 2008 as sort of a homebrew setting amongst my friends and I, and then took a bit of break for a couple of years. And I think I've been working on the rules for about 4 years, but I got really serious about 2 and a bit years ago. So I would say about 4 years I've been designing this. But that being said, it's been rebuilt a couple of times, and this is a very long production period for me because I wanted to be really thorough, because I wanted to do it right, and I was learning a lot of stuff as I was going.
Now, we've seen, I'm looking at your Kickstarter page right now. You do have a lot of background. There's a lot of holes to fill. That's a pretty interesting thing that has helped actually the player build into it.
Yeah, so I think it was like one of my very first updates I posted on Kickstarter is a big bunch of stuff that's not going to be fully explained in the setting. And that comes from my belief as to how role-playing settings should be developed, different to settings for other mediums. So if you're doing like a book or a movie or something like that, you really want to flesh it out. It's much more sort of like a character's in focus, and it's telling their story as they're going through the world. Like you look at Lord of the Rings. It's really focused around those key characters as they move through, and it's a very well fleshed out world. But the way that I think a good role-playing setting should be built is that it's not its goal to come up with all of the stories that need to be played, but rather it should provide the fuel and to sort of inspire GMs and players. It's not my job to come up with everything. I'm supposed to basically provide lots and lots of inspiration and that sort of a bit of a framework and a direction so as the GMs and players can be on the same page, but I really want to equip players and GMs to go and play a game. So I very purposefully not explained everything and sort of encourage people like, hey, this sort of stuff exists, but how does it work? I'm not going to tell you. I've got an idea, but I'm never going to write it down because I want you to come up with your own ideas.
So you really just built like a giant sandbox, you know, put a few toys in there, and then just given us a few mechanics and just said, all right, go nuts.
You make it sound so easy.
Sorry if I oversimplified it.
No, that's fine. So when I first started constructing this project, I wrote down some very key themes to the mechanics and the setting. And one of those key themes is exploration and sandbox games. So while this game system can be played for one-offs, it's really at its best for long sandbox games. That's what it's really designed for and where it flourishes, which is really tricky to introduce people to, because you're like, when you're introducing people to it, you do a one-off game, and I'm like, oh, you really need to play this for a couple of months to start to get it, to see how it all works. Yeah.
Now, when you release, are you going to have, like you said, one-offs? Are you going to actually have a few one-off campaigns to show people to bring their friends into the game?
Yeah, so with the Kickstarter, I'm giving a Kickstarter exclusive adventure called Let Sleeping Gods Lie. Everyone can get that reference. And this is the adventure that I like to use when I'm introducing people to the setting. And I'm going to give a couple of pre-made characters, and that's really going to be something to really good for new players to come in. Because I think that's really important, trying to ease people into a new rule system, a new setting. I need to make it as easy as possible. I do have another stretch goal for another adventure, which would be a much longer sort of one.
Okay. So when we've talked about fantasy here a little bit, a lot of times when, you know, your typical tropes you have, like elves or dwarves, You have your mage or your rogue. You have really defined character kind of slots.
Mm.
Was it kind of difficult to avoid this? Because, I mean, it sounds like you can really just build whatever you want, and so while you kind of like to be able to move away from that, because it sounds great, do you kind of find people lose their orientation when you take away the things that they're used to or the class structures that they're familiar seeing?
Yeah, so I think I've moved away from a lot of the standard sort of systems quite a bit in a couple of different ways. Like, one of the things, like, there being no humans in my setting. I'm hoping that fact really shows people, hey, this is not your normal sort of science fiction sort of RPG. And I think there's plenty of game systems out there that do those really good tropes really well. Like, I think the market's got those really well. And I think if I was to do that same sort of thing, I don't think I'd be contributing to RPGs as a whole a great deal. I really want to expand the medium just that little bit more in my own way, and I'm hoping I can do that. Will it be a little bit trickier for people to get? Just a little bit, yeah, it will be.
Now, you said you have 4 races. Can you go a little bit into what each one of those are?
Yeah, of course. So I've got so the setting is these 4 races in this one solar system, and they're just coming back out into space and reconnecting with each other. So 100 years ago there was the Great War, and so that sort of shapes this a bit. So you've got one race, they're called the Legion, and they were created during the war. They're kind of these big, strong lizard ape people, and they were created during the war to fight. And it's now 100 years after the war, and they, as a society, are really struggling for direction because everyone wants to be a soldier. No one wants to be an accountant or a mom or a dad or a builder. They all want to fight.
Sorry. I'm really enjoying this, man. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm just like, wow, he really is. He's hitting all these really great touchstones, and I appreciate that.
That's good. So, like, with the Legion, that's really one of their central themes, is that struggle for identity. And for them, that whole nurture versus nature thing comes up a bit because they're all created to be soldiers. They all want to fight. Now, the Legion, they very recently have started selling themselves as mercenaries to the second playable race called the Corporation. And the Corporation were rejected by their creators as sort of a subpar race, and during the war they were actually liberated from that. So they've rejected their racial identity and they've looked back at ancient humans. Humans died about 10,000 years ago, and they thought, oh, what made the humans successful? And they grabbed onto money. So they're all about capitalism. They're all about the individual. I'm going to succeed or fail based on my own merits. No master or creator is going to tell me whether I'm a success or a failure. So the Corporation, they're all about money and big companies, but also they're a unifying force. So they're actually bringing the 4 races together, not for noble reasons, but for self-gain reasons. And they hire the Legion as mercenaries, so now the Legion are fighting for the Corporation a lot. So that's those 2. Then the third one is you've got the Kaltorans. So the Kaltorans were once a great empire. The war came along and pretty much killed them all. To survive the war, they built homes for themselves underground, under an ocean, and hid there for 100 years. But the thing about the Kaltorans is that they've got genetic memories. So they're actually born with the memories of their ancestors of not only the war, but also the 100 years it took to survive it. So like brutal cannibalism, living in the dark, and real nasty sort of stuff. So they're very eager for a fresh start. And they're quite a rebellious sort of race. They don't really have a government. They're all about family. They're kind of dirty sort of technology, a little bit steampunkish in terms of their aesthetic. But they don't get along with the corporation well, because the corporation are all like clean and lines and contracts, and the Kaltorans, they're like, no, it's my word, you know, it's all about loyalty and friendship and like much more emotion driven. And they have 4 ears and dreadlocks, so yeah. And the fourth race is the Nephilim, and this is the race that actually waged the war on everybody else, and they won. But the thing is that after they won, their creator abandoned them, and they were just left. And they're like these genetically engineered monsters. Like, they look like monsters, and they're quite amoral, and because they're just bred for war. But now they're trying to maintain peace with the other races because they know they need it. They need stability. They need stuff that they don't have, and the other races have this. But the problem is, there's all this prejudice because they're the ones that killed everyone else. And so they're trying to overcome that, and they're trying to overcome these sort of basically PR problems they've got. So they're kind of the monstrous race that people can go. But some of them don't always look like monsters because they're big into genetic engineering. So some of them, they're designed to look much friendlier to try and ease that tension. So yeah, that's kind of my quick summary. Hopefully that's not too much info.
No, that's great. I'm actually I'm a fluff junkie. Okay, so those are the playable races. Will there be other non-playable races that people get to interact with? Because these all sound kind of like there's no clear-cut good guy. They're all just different shades of gray. Is there one race that you could just point a finger at and say, these are the bad guys, these will always be the bad guys?
No. The big thing about this setting is there is no clear-cut big bad guy. Because for this setting, it's not about this impending doom, like obvious threat that's coming for everyone. It's all the big bad was in the past, and now they're just trying to pull the pieces together. So, in terms of the bad guys that you fight, the antagonists, you're probably looking at largely the other races, them squabbling with each other, them fighting each other. There is one race that is distinctively a bad guy race, though, just for those sorts of games where people want sort of an easy focus point for a story, and they're called the Mechanids, and they're robots that were created to fight the war, and then when the war ended and they ran out of targets, they just kind of stopped, and then they're just waiting for new targets to come close to them, and they sort of wake up. And so they're like a big, nasty disintegration ray sort of stuff. Yeah. So they were specifically designed for combat, and players can't go those at all.
Okay.
Now, looking back into the, got my little show notes here. Looking back into the fluff, I guess the progenitors, the ones that were creating everything, created hundreds of races. Are we going to see like ruins or little offshoots of these races?
Yeah, so there was 2 created races. There was one race called the Archons, and they kind of made most of the races. And then there was Exion, who made the Nephilim. And because the setting to start off with is primarily in one solar system, this solar system used to be a Kaltoran solar system. So you've got a lot of Kaltoran ruins, but you can also come across like ancient Archon or Exion labs and things like that. And if you really want to go into deep, deep, far future exploration, there's ancient human ruins that you could stumble upon as well. Which is good for that whole post-apocalyptic exploration thing. Like, ruins are great. Hmm.
The golden arches of the future.
So does it all take place within this one Kaltoran system, or are you exploring other solar systems?
So I've got, in my book, I've got 2 maps. And one map is of the Haven system. That's the central solar system. And it's reasonably fleshed out. All the planets are written about, and it's kind of got a bunch of information there and stuff for people could use as plot hooks. But then I've got a second map, and that's zoomed out, and that's looking at a whole sector with, I think it's got like 40-something solar systems in it. But only 3 of those solar systems are marked. So most of it is unexplored, and that's on purpose, because that's for people who want to leave this solar system and go out into the wild and the frontiers. There's lots of stuff out there for them.
So as a writer, I mean, these holes are great, to let people kind of game inside of the gaps, so to speak. Does that make it a little bit difficult for you? I mean, if there's ever like a future book or a supplement book, you have all these big holes that you kind of need to step around, because somebody can't say, you can't do that in this solar system. I've already said that this solar system has nothing in it, or you know what I'm saying? I mean, are these holes for the people to play in? Are they going to become potholes for you to try and move over later on?
I think there is a little bit of a trickiness to it. So in terms of all of the plot holes, I myself have an idea of how to fill them. Okay? And I think that's important that I still have that idea, because it helps me maintain continuity across multiple plot holes. Okay? Otherwise, it just ends up all over the place. But I really want players to come up with their own version and slant on this setting. See, I've got my idea of Fragged Empire, but someone else can have a different idea. Like, maybe there's a GM out there who really wants horror themes, so they make everything really super scary and dark, and a lot more than what I've originally written it. I think that's fine. Yeah, I guess I'm quite comfortable with that, because role-playing games are all about writing stories.
Now, I noticed here in the rules overview, you kind of put a player creativity is encouraged. That really, when you do something, it's not based off of one certain skill. It's a pretty unique way to go at it.
I think one of the things I really like about role-playing games that other games, particularly board games, don't get to give is creative problem solving. And so what I want to do from a game mechanics perspective is to work out the maths a little bit and create a structure, but I don't want to tell people exactly how to solve a set problem. And one of the examples I used, is how to get through a locked door. So you pick what skill you're going to use. Are you going to use mechanics and take the paneling off and cut the hydraulics and then force it open? You're going to use electronics to sort of hotwire it, or are you going to use programming to hack into the data, like the control panel, and
or a shotgun.
Alan's always solving problems with violence. So I think I caught this. Your system doesn't actually use XP in it, correct?
Yeah.
So then, how do players evolve their characters then, as time goes on?
So, because my game is designed for a sandbox-style game, you advance in 3 different ways. So you do have levels, and levels represent your personal skill and knowledge. And the way that I've got it set up in the rules by default is every 3rd session you gain a level. And of course, GMs can tweak that. So the reason I've done it like that is because I don't want people chasing kills for XP. So when you come up against a problem in a role-playing game, I don't want the players to be thinking, what's going to give me the most XP, and then choosing that. I want them to pick the smart choice. I want them to say, okay, let's avoid this fight because it's actually dangerous and I don't want to get shot at. Or let's go do this because it'll give us more resources or something like that. I don't like this whole killing the XP thing. I think it leads to an unrealistic type of character that sort of, yeah. And the second and third way I've got is influence and resources. So resources is an ambiguous way of how you, like, it's not necessarily just money. It's like money or materials or your personal ability, and it's used for acquiring armor and weapons and things like that. So that represents sort of your equipment, and then influence is primarily used for acquiring a spacecraft. So what you'll get is that some games will be different. So some games might be high level, but low resources and influence. You got like that Firefly, you know, they're all very skilled and talented individuals, but they're running around with just a pistol and maybe a combat vest. Then you might get some games like the, I don't know, Space Commandos, you know, go kill some alien horde, and you end up with that high resources and high level but a low influence because it's all about your guns and your skill, but you don't really have a spaceship. So I wanted to act them a little bit like dials that GMs can use.
Now I noticed you use a 3d6 mechanic instead of a d20 or a d10. What made you go that route?
So I really love the bell curve, if anyone knows much about that. So with the difference between a d20 and a 3d6 system, there's a couple of differences. The main one is that with a d20, you've got an even chance of rolling every number. So you're just as likely to roll a 20 as you are a 1 or a 2. Which, from a balance perspective, is much easier to work with because each +1 or -1 doesn't make that much of a difference. And it makes for quite random rolls. Whereas a 3d6 system, you're far more likely to roll a 10 or an 11, and very unlikely to roll that 18 or 3. They're much rarer, so you kind of end up with this bell curve in terms of like what you can roll. From a balance perspective, it means I've got to be much more careful where I put pluses and minuses, but I feel like it reflects real life a little bit more because most people know what they can do. So if you, for example, ask a plumber to fix your pipes, he's going to look at it and go, oh yes, I can do that. I know I've got the ability. So you kind of, it's much more predictable. Like, so you roll your 3d6 and you add your bonus and you sort of know what you're going to roll 80% of the time. Whereas with a d20 system, it's like, okay, I've got a 30% chance, but you know it could go either way. Hopefully that explains a little bit. It's a little bit mathsy, but yeah, I'm trying to hold back.
That's fine. I actually love all the math. So, so you were talking about combat, and you've got a lot of great videos out there showing off the combat of how combat works in the system. Honestly, like when I started looking at like the different ranges, I started thinking about the game Infinity, and I also noticed you use those miniatures in your system. Are there any other like for the people who aren't familiar with it or with RPGs? Are there any other systems that you kind of used as an influence for this game, for the combat at least?
I think this is another question that I get a lot, and I think I really struggle to answer it, mostly because I've been working on this system for so long. It's hard for me to say, oh, it's like this one. I'm sure there's other systems out there like what I've got, but it's, yeah, I don't think I can answer that. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, that's fine.
Now, one of the things I saw interesting was So you can build your own weapons and armor, even spaceships.
Yep.
Now, are you going to have like a community fan page where people can say, hey, I built this. This is pretty cool. Or don't go down this route or it'll blow you to bits.
Yeah, so the system that I've got at the moment is, and I recently uploaded another video actually on how to make weapons and equipment. So the way that it works is you grab your base item, and then you can apply a template, and I call this a variation. So let's say you grab a rifle. Is it going to be a Gauss rifle, or is it going to be some biotech spine launcher rifle? Okay, and you apply that template, and then you can apply mods to it. Like, do you want to add a scope, extend the barrel, shorten the clip, do little tweaks to it, and that's pretty much how you make equipment. So it gives it. I kind of think of it a little bit like Lego, in that I'm giving you the pieces and you choose how to put it together. And the reason why I've done that is because I want to multiply the options that people can have, but not add more rules. So I can, and I don't want to have pages and pages and pages of equipment and stuff. There's already enough on that. I'd rather just say, here's the weapon, here's the templates, you choose how to put them together.
So I love that you can customize everything. Will there be like unique or legendary or special like pre-configured weapons that people can discover? Or I'm imagining like a James Gunn Vera Firefly. Is there like I can make that a specific reward for a mission that my party goes through and they say, oh, by the way, at the end of the hallway you find a pile of bodies and one scruffy-looking guy, bleeding out, and he hands you this weapon, sort of thing.
Okay, yeah, so definitely. So the way that I've done this, I can answer this in a few ways. Yes, there are some specific weapons, and a lot of those are more exotic type stuff. For example, you can get an item called a Grav Gauntlet, and it's basically like telekinetic gauntlet for someone who wants to do melee attacks at range. But it's got on there, you can't apply any variation templates to it because it's an actual thing. There's no multiple types of it. So that's one sort of thing. There's a few like that. There's also, you can do research to invent new types of weapons. So I've got a bunch of example ones there. So if you want to go that mad scientist and build that orbital bombardment gun, there's actually rules in the book for that. And they're really strange. Like they don't work like normal guns, and they're not for everybody. They're not automatically more powerful. They're weird, which I think mad scientist type characters will like those sort of ones. The way that I've got it, so if you find a weapon, let's say Vera, you found Vera, it would be a certain assault rifle and would have lots of mods on it, because some mods are really hard to get. So I've got a system called spare time rolls, and you've got to sort of roll to see whether you can acquire a certain mod or not, and they can be quite hard rolls. But if you want to, as a GM, give a special reward, you can say, okay, you found this weapon, and it's got this really rare mod on it. So that makes it quite unique and something that's just not easily accessible.
Now I see spaceships are a nice part of the lore in the system. How useful will those be, and how's the combat with those?
Yeah, so the spaceship rules, I really need to get some videos and put them out, because they're the one part of my rules I haven't finished writing yet. And mostly the reason I haven't finished writing out the rules is because I started my Kickstarter, so it sort of slowed me down a fair bit. So think of a spaceship as a bit like a mobile base. So you've got cargo space on it, and you can pick what workshops and labs you want to put on it for like research and things like that, or for building stuff. And then you can pick what weapons you put on it. Spaceships are built a lot like a character. So you're building that character that everyone's sort of sharing. Then for the combat, So it works quite a fair bit different to personal combat because it's primarily designed that everybody's in the one spaceship and each of you will take a different system. Like, are you in engineering? Are you in command? Are you in operations? Or are you in gunnery? And you're trying to work as a team to sort of pull it together. You've also got, like, the way that movement works in space is quite unique. So you've got your spaceship, and you set how much thrusters you've got, and that alters your velocity. And then next turn, you're going to automatically move your velocity, and so you're trying to control that by increasing it or decreasing it, and you end up with a lot of force to movement, because as soon as you start moving in space, you're going to stay moving until something slows you down. So I wanted to make it more than just guns. Like, it's a little bit of, like, I actually want to apply some physics to it, just a little bit, not too much so it's unfun, but enough to make it a bit unique.
Yeah, like I said, I'm an engineer by trade, and so I'm loving every bit of this. But let's change gears here just a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
So people will go onto Kickstarter. I think the first thing they're going to notice is the art for this game. It's really beautiful. Can you tell us a little bit about the artist that you have working for you and kind of the process for developing this art?
Yeah. So I'm a graphic designer by trade. So I'm a very big on visuals. Like, I love pretty pictures. I love art, and to me, art is not. It's not just a shiny coat. It's not just like adding that nice polish or that nice finish to something. To me, art is communication. Just like writing, you look at a picture and it tells you a story. It gives you information. And so I'm very passionate about that. I'm also really passionate about working with emerging artists. I myself have done illustration work, and I've worked with lots of artistic friends, and realizing how really difficult that is to be an artist, because it can be quite hard to find work and then clients not understanding you. And that's not clients' fault, because art's not their thing. That's why they go to artists. So for my project, and I started this a couple of years ago, I started looking for artists to help me. And I was very purposefully picking artists who don't have an established name. If I'd seen them in a book or a magazine, I didn't really want them on my project. And this is not because they're too expensive or something like that, but rather I really want to help emerging artists. I want to be that good client that they've never come across before, or that client that can actually understand them and has been in their shoes, because I myself get commissioned for art pieces. So I wanted to work with them, develop ongoing relationships, and help them enjoy my project, and also take their contributions so they get to help design the setting. Like, a lot of my races, I had vague ideas of how they looked, but I wanted to give my artists that opportunity to really contribute and to invent it. I didn't want all this to be just my ideas. They're great visual artists, and I think they've come up with wonderful ideas. And I've kind of worked with them to sort of hopefully bring that out. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Sorry, it's a big topic. I'm really passionate about this one. I could talk forever.
Yeah. Well, has there been an example, like you were talking about how letting the artists influence the game? Were there times where you went into something, you had kind of a vague idea, and you said, I have this idea for this race, and they're kind of, a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. And the artist just ever come back and said, I heard what you said, but this is what I came up with different. And it just totally took you in a whole new direction.
I think a couple of times that's come across a fair few times where I've sort of given artists a fair bit of a leeway, and I think it's worked about half the time. Sometimes I'm like, it's a good idea, but it doesn't quite fit. And then other times I'm like, wow, I really like that, and just sort of explore it a bit more. It's for art, there's that exploration element. You just have to draw it, see what it looks like, and that's whether you know it works or not. It doesn't automatically work just because it looks nice. Sometimes it's like, okay, give me 3 or 4 different designs, and then I'll pick one of them and I'll say, oh, I like a little bit from this one, add it to that. There's that inevitable exploration stage, and that's actually kind of cool. That's exciting and a very valuable part of the process.
Now I notice here the book is going to be fully colored. That's pretty cool for a RPG.
Yeah, so this book is going to be borderline an art book in some ways. Like, for me, I love art books. I love stuff that looks nice, and I know a lot of people aren't going to be buying this for the rules, and I really don't want to disappoint. So I want something really, really beautiful, and so it's going to be hardcover, full color, nice thick pages, a decent chunky book, lots of short stories. And I guess in many ways, I want something that I can be proud of. You know, I want something that I really want to use myself and have myself. So.
Well, originally that wasn't, the hardcover, full color. That was not originally going to be a part of the project. That was something that was brought about by stretch goals that people unlocked in Kickstarter, right?
Yeah, it's true. So original goal was for 15,000, and that was going to be a soft color, full color book, but it was going to be print-on-demand quality, which is not as good as offset printing, which normal printing uses. And I was like, I don't think I would have been happy at all if that's all we reached. I mean, it would have been enough to finish the book, but it wouldn't look as nice. And so my very first stretch goals were, let's add a couple more pages, let's get the print quality upgraded, then hardcover. And I think there was a sense of everyone sort of holding their breath for a moment because I wasn't offering any other content. I'm like, okay, we've got to remain focused. These stretch goals are going to be hard to reach, but we've got to get those first because I want to finish the book. Let's get the book funded, and then we'll look at extra stuff. So I'm very happy we made that, so it was good.
So were you surprised at how quickly you reached, first of all, funding levels, and then those first 2 Kickstart levels?
Yeah, so I mean, we got funded in 12 hours. That's insane. I mean, before I launched the Kickstarter, I started to pick up a bit of a vibe that people were getting really excited, and this is my baby. Like, I'm all precious about it. I'm scared, and I go through days where I'm nervous and stressed, and other days I'm like, woo, I'm making a book. This is amazing. So, the emotional roller coaster for me, I think, was particularly high on that first night, and just watching the number go up. And normally watching a number go up is not that exciting unless it's got a dollar symbol in front of it. And then it's like, oh my goodness. So I think I was getting like Facebook messages and text messages from friends and old family members, and they're like, "What is this? What's going on?" So it was a very interesting first night and couple of days.
I imagine it was like equal parts terrifying as it was exciting.
It was a bit. Honestly, I think it took me a couple of weeks before I finally calmed down. And I was finally like, okay, this is good. I know what's going on now. I'm not quite so scared by this. And I'm really glad that I had Modifius, who I've been working with, Chris Birch. He runs Modifius. It's a company from the UK. And he's done RPG Kickstarters before. He's been great help. And I'm really glad I had him to talk to over Skype because he settled a lot of my nerves. He's like, okay, calm down. Here's a plan. Like, just helping me talk through stuff because, none of my friends have ever done Kickstarters. None of them have written an RPG, let alone a book. And so it was nice to have someone I could talk to. So that's been really helpful.
Now, for people just joining us or watching this video, at what level, basic level, can they look at right now that gets them the most stretch goals and the best bang for the buck?
I think there's really sort of two pledge levels I think people should probably be looking at. So you get the physical book for $75, and that includes postage to the States, the UK, and Australia. A little bit extra if you're just outside of those spots. I think because we've reached so many stretch goals and the content's been upgraded so much, that's really good value now. But if you're looking to get lots of content, I'd probably say the $30 pledge level, which gets you the PDF, a bunch of extras, and our next set of stretch goals. Like, we've got 3 stretch goals coming up, which are all about upgrading the pledges of $30 or more. And I think now that we've sort of raised the money for the book, I just want to give people more stuff. I'm like, okay, let's use this funding to make more adventures. Let's get some ambient audio tracks made. Let's get more short stories. It's all about upgrading that sort of stuff. So I'm very thankful for the backers that I've got. So I want to try and give them as best value I can.
So look at the stretch goals coming up. I got to ask this because this is one of those things that drives me nuts about some other Kickstarters out there. Sometimes you'll see a Kickstarter, they'll say, we're asking for $15,000. That's all we need to get our game out. But then they're pulling out perfectly polished content all the way up to the $1 million mark. They're like, oh, we never thought it would get this big, but by the way, we've got this perfectly. You can tell that they've had a plan a long way out.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at do you have plans beyond this $100,000? Or I mean, like you said, you didn't think it would get this, explode like it did. How far out are you projecting?
I think for me, I want to touch on that thing you talked about a little bit. That whole trying to figure out how to structure your stretch goals. It can be quite tricky, and I think Chris gave me some really good feedback on this, which was plan your core book, then plan a bunch of stretch goals, but don't set in what order they're going to be, because a lot of that's going to be based off backer feedback, feedback from backers. So for me, I had planned a bunch of stretch goals, but I moved forward a bunch of my content and setting stretch goals to be a lot earlier because I realized that's what people wanted. They're like, this is a new setting, I want to learn more about it. So I moved those forward. For me, I have a couple of ideas of what I could do over 100, but I'm really apprehensive to say what they are because then it's like, oh, he planned for 140 and didn't make it. Wasn't he presumptuous? So the stretch goals that I've got out there, those honestly are what I've locked in. I've got all the quotes and logistics, and I've planned it out in terms of time. I do have some ideas of what I'd like to do over 100, and I think we're probably looking in the realm of some additional books. So we're doing 2 books at the moment, and I've already sort of talked in the comments and to other backers about my ideas for another few books. I think those would probably be the ones I'd do, but I'd probably only do them as PDFs. The reason for this is because I set a goal for me of April next year to deliver, and the more stuff that I add in, particularly printing, that makes that goal harder to reach. So I want to be really careful about that. I don't want to overcommit, if that makes sense. But that being said, I'd really love to do another couple of books. I've already got them in my head. So I'm going to hold back a little bit. Because art and writing, it takes time. Playtesting, it takes time.
Yeah.
It's not all about money. Like, a lot of it is, it's just time as a resource.
Now, working with Modifius, I've seen that they've gone to a few conventions and all that. Are we going to see you do a grand world tour on convention circuits?
Oh, that'd be fun, wouldn't it? Oh,
You need to come out to Gen Con.
I would love to make it over to Gen Con, and I think that'd be really nice. Like, I think at the moment, I really want to set this next year for me. I think is really about, let's get a couple of books finished, printed, because I need to prove to people that I can deliver. I think that's really important that I do that first. Let me prove myself to you, and then if I have, then I can start going to conventions and stuff like that. Because, I mean, quite frankly, no one's holding my book. I mean, this is all what Kickstarter's about. It's like to sort of fund the dream in a bit of a way. Let's make it a reality first, and then I would love to go to some conventions. That'd be a lot of fun.
So part of this whole Kickstarter experience, other than being funded within your first 12 hours, which is amazing, and again, congratulations on it. Were there other surprises or things you didn't expect, or like, oh wow, nobody told me about this?
I think, yeah, there's a couple of things that's really surprised me. The big thing is that we were continuously going up every day in terms of funding. Like, I expected a big start and I expect a big end, but the amount that has gone up between those two times, that surprised me quite a bit. And I think that's where the bulk of our funding is actually coming from, is not the high end and start and the high end and the start. It's actually the middle. So that kind of threw me off a bit. The other thing that threw me off is how nice backers are. Like, I think there's just something about the RPG community, the gamer community, and the Kickstarter community. I think just everyone's been very supportive, very nice, and I've really enjoyed just talking to people. Like, I get a lot of private messages sent to me, and it's a pleasure for me to take time to reply to people. I really like that. So I think that was surprising, the amount of enjoyment. It wasn't quite so, because I'm used to customers and more business and stuff like that, and this is a different type of relationship. This is not like a client-producer relationship. This is different. This is a creator and a patron type. I don't know exactly how to explain it, but it's much nicer.
I think you've kind of hit the sweet spot there. As much as you like talking to the people who are, backing you, people who back you, we love hearing stuff from the creators, and we like at least feeling like we've got a bit of the creators' ears. We're a little bit of part of that process.
I think that's something that maybe a lot of backers don't realize, and maybe this is different for other people, but I've had so many discussions with backers, and I'm like, you know what? That's a fantastic idea. Do you mind if I put that in my book? And if you look at my pledge levels, a lot of them are, hey, contribute to this setting, design a bad guy, or help me design a location. And I really enjoy that, because this project, this is not a one-man show. There's a lot of people involved in this, and backers are involved just as much as any as the artists or the writers. And after this Kickstarter's finished, there will be a lot more. There'll still be community interacting with me, but it won't be quite so much, because I'll have to lock things down.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, will there be a community portal after the Kickstarter is over for fans to contact other fans and get ideas going?
Yeah, so shortly after the Kickstarter, once the Kickstarter's finished, I'm going to take a small break for a week or so, just to recharge my batteries. And then when I get back, we're going to go straight into the backup playtest. So the rules they're pretty much written, and I'm going to set up a forum, and that's going to be where I'm going to hang out. I won't be hanging out in social media places quite so much after that, but I'll be hanging around in the forums, and that'll be that place where everyone can talk to me, talk to each other, and yeah, it'll be good.
I'm just envisioning like an online version of like your character creation sheet. You know, be great if I could just like hit a whole bunch of, because I know you've got kind of like smart PDFs, but if I could just go down and say like, all right, I've got a game tonight, so pick my race, pick my skills, customize all my weapons, print, and then I've got it all sitting right there.
Yeah, that's a topic that's that's a topic that's come up quite a bit. So I'm not a programmer, and I'm quite aware of that. So those PDFs, I can add some functionality to those, but PDF by its format is innately limited in some ways. I'm exploring a few different options of how to get a better character creation system, like a more interactive one. But I think it will come down to I need to find somebody with the right skills and the knowledge that I need. And I think that's really sums up how I like to work in a lot of ways. I'm like, I need great art, go find great artists. I need to write about science, like hard science fluff. I need to go find a scientist, go talk to them. And the same way that I want to get a character creator programmed up, I need to go find a programmer and have a chat to them.
Well, if you ever need a rocket scientist,
we can have you critique my spacecraft rules.
My pleasure. All right, well, I think we've taken up enough of your time. Wade, I appreciate you taking a few minutes. We've been here for about an hour, so appreciate you taking a little bit of time out of your day to talk with us.
That's right. It was lovely to talk to you guys.
Now, where can people find you online for the project and for like the videos and everything?
So probably the best place is go to the Kickstarter. So if you just type in Fragged Empire Kickstarter into Google, it'll come up there. I've got a website, fraggedempire.com, and a YouTube channel with Fragged Empire. This is the name of the YouTube channel. Yeah, but pretty easy to find.
All right, guys. Well, thanks once again for coming on, and thank you, viewers, for watching us. If you haven't yet, please back the project. It's going to be a lot of fun. Only 16 days left, so going to see a lot of good stuff coming out of it. A lot of nice artwork.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think you need to be a pen and paper guy to appreciate the book, because it looks phenomenal. The setting is amazing. There's something in there for everybody.
All right. I've been Wildchevy, joined by Rocketyeti and Wade. If you like what you've seen here, put a comment down below. We'll also have links to the project down below as well. Share with your friends, comment, like, and subscribe. We'll catch you guys later on the next show. Have a good night.
Good night.
Night.